The final leg of our election significance tour starts with our place on the national stage. It's been a long time since we've been the bellwether we once were. Not since 2004 has the state voted for a Republican for president. Joe Biden won by 10 points this time around, though Republicans once more laid claim to the 2nd Congressional District. And Lana, does New Mexico as a state feel solid blue to you?
No, it's not a deep blue. I always say it's violet. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's very clear signs. I mean, Democrats don't win by enough in the state to be deep blue, either at the presidential level or the statewide level in terms of federal contest. Yvette Herrell just took the second CD really large. And of course, registrations for Democrats in the state are under 50%.
Interesting point. Merritt, pick up on that. Same exact question. Does it work for you?
No.
Okay.
As at the state level, I almost feel like we are in a democratic machine. And I don't think that, and it's an easy political trope to say, oh, that's why we're at the bottom of everything. It's the Democrats' fault. Like, one party rule, universal power universally corrupts. And I think that is an issue that we deal with at the state level. But no, at a national level, I definitely agree. We're not a deep blue state. I do think nationally, though, this was not a referendum on Democrats or Republicans either. It's kind of like the 2nd District. This country was founded, and it's been a phenomenal success. We were the first really modern republic. This was supposed to be a government that was not about rulers. It was flexible enough that we could elect government after government, and these things would change. And it was about the republic and not the ruler. And we have a very, very strong president right now, and he is very personality based. And the Republican Party has embraced this personality cult, if you were, around the president, and based the whole campaign on that. And to me, this was a referendum on ruler versus republic. And
That's interesting.
It's been very close, and closer than a lot of people or pollsters wanted to think. We saw this almost 80 years ago, I guess I could say, with FDR. 4 terms. Oh my gosh. Can you even imagine that today? And it took some time to kind of unwind that. And the successive presidents had some interesting problems and issues to manage, as well as a population who is very used to, well, FDR, he's always been the president. He's always president. Who are you? And so whoever is president in 2021, it looks like, as of taping, it's leaning toward Joe Biden. And whoever is president in 2024 are going to have to manage the expectations of half the country wanting a ruler instead of a republic. And we see that in New Mexico, the trends of the rural areas who strongly supported Trump. They wanted this strong leader rather than a republic and figuring out issues on their own. And I think that's a very complex issue, and it's not just being a Democrat or being a Republican.
That is fantastically complex as I listen to you say it. Martha, that complexity, it's easy to say it's a rural versus urban divide, but the rural parts of our state are going through their own changes. The urban parts of our state are going through their own changes. Where does this all shake out at the end of the day?
Well, talking about New Mexico on the national stage, I don't know where the demographics whether that will change our place on the national stage. But I do think it might change. And there's a lot of scuttlebutt going around, which is fun to follow. It may not be worth a darn, but let me tell you some of it. So let's suppose Biden is elected. Udall, of course, has been mentioned as Secretary of the Interior, but so has Heinrich. And so some of the scuttlebutt is, well, if Heinrich is appointed Secretary of the Interior, the governor appoints someone to take his place until an election can be held. Maybe she'll appoint herself.
Interesting.
Think about that.
That qualifies
And
as scuttlebutt. That absolutely
right.
qualifies.
And on the other side of Capitol Hill, let me just say, or
Please.
that same side actually now, because it will be the Senate, but Ben Ray Lujan has made quite a mark for himself in the House, in the Democratic leadership in Washington. I don't expect that to change at all when he moves over to the Senate. I think we're going to be hearing a lot about him. I think he'll do a lot for New Mexico, as he has as a House member. And so I think we're pretty fortunate to have him. One more thing I ran across sort of apropos of this subject is the Ledger Fernandez seat, CD3, and how it has been a stepping stone up. Bill Richardson had that seat. He became governor. Ben Ray had the seat, and now he's a senator. So what does that mean for the future for our first Hispanic woman in that seat? We don't know, but it's a stepping stone.
That's interesting to contemplate. Lotta, we fell just shy of 70% turnout. I would have bet money we would have gone over that number, but be that as it may, it's a very weird year. 200,000 Democrats cast absentee ballots, as you know, and 200,000 Republicans voted early in person. What should voting rules look like going forward to encourage turnout? Is there anything we could do to get over that threshold?
That's a really top threshold. Certainly we could expand that, but that's as good as we did in 2008. That's a real high mark generally across the nation, thinking about a 70% registration vote. So that's very high. But how do we do that? I think the things that are really creating sort of opportunities for mobilization, and this is where one place that I think social media plays a positive role, maybe the only place, is at least in politics, is that I do think it mobilizes people to turn out. Getting those messages on your Facebook and Twitter and all of that is really encouraging, and seeing your friends and relatives and other people voting is really relevant to motivating yourself to vote. So what we do know about voting, we think that things like education and age and these resources matter, but those are really related to networks. What really matters to voter turnout is being part of a network of people who are turning out. And social media.
Lana, can I interrupt for a quick sec? What about the quality of the information these folks are receiving in their network? Some might consider them a bubble. Some might consider them just being around like-minded people. Is there a quality threshold using that approach?
Well, I was just talking about the mobilization, the information fragmentation is a huge problem going on in the country, and it's very polarizing. So that's not that's a negative about social media, but a real positive is that it's encouraging people to participate and become civically engaged, and ultimately, hopefully, that will improve information as well.
Gotcha. Hey, got to ask about Steve Pearce. Merritt, I'm curious about his performance as party leader. He swore up and down he was going to deliver deliver New Mexico for Trump. That did not happen. He also said he would flip CD2. That did happen. Is he in a better position than he was 6 months ago with the party, or is everything still sort of the same?
I think CD2 plus Crystal Runyon Diamond, I think he's in a very good position. I think
John Arthur Smith's old seat. Yep.
Yeah, I also think because Ron Keddy's campaign was managed by his primary rival and their rival camp, that also strengthens him. So I think of the dueling factions, the Republican Party, Steve Pearce's certainly came out strong.
Really? It's interesting. We had it's not challenging when I say really like that. We had him on in our Tuesday night coverage here in New Mexico PBS. We did a live stream. He was willing to come on and talk a little bit about it. I've tried to press him just a little bit about this idea for Trump and delivering New Mexico. Does that not diminish him at all in the party's eyes, or is it just people took it more as just noise, as something to say back then?
Trump's campaign director arrived in the state well over a year ago.
Yeah.
And she was very charismatic, worked very hard, mobilized a great deal of effort, worked hand in hand with the state GOP. And so I guess, though, I would put it, the Trump campaign in New Mexico is not synonymous with the New Mexico GOP. So I feel among the hardcore Republicans who follow this, I don't see this as a big blemish on Steve Pearce.
Gotcha. Martha Burke, interestingly, I'm wondering if you feel like, who owns the Democratic Party in New Mexico now? Is this Mr. Heinrich's party? Is this, whose party is it at this point?
Well, the governor has done a good job on COVID, so maybe it's her party right now. She's done everything she could do, I think, and she's getting very high marks, although our situation is not as good. Is it still maybe the party of Udall, or maybe becoming the party of Heinrich? I don't know, Gene. Neither of them are known, they're not Bernie Sanders. and neither is New Mexico, as Lana has so aptly pointed out. So maybe the Democratic Party is up for grabs. But I think right now, given the COVID situation and the performance of our leaders, it's got to belong to the governor.
Is she the one that stirs the drink, so to speak? Is she the power broker? I guess is what I'm getting at as well. We've got obviously a midterm coming up. We've got her own, re-election stuff coming up. Is she the one to actually make things work here?
Yeah, I think she is, Gene, but I think she doesn't do it as blatantly or openly as many others have in the past. Bill Richardson being one. I worked for Richardson in his administration. He's a very different personality. I think she is a power broker. I think she wields a lot of power, but she doesn't do it in a screamy way.
Right.
She does it quietly and effectively, generally. And this, I just have to say, going back to Merritt's conversation about Pearce, this is something that is, to me, irritating about Pearce. He seems to want to do that heavy hand, and I don't think that endears him to some members of his own party. Merritt may disagree, but I think he's a little bit too much of a hammer at times.
Merritt, you want to react to that? Do you have a sense of that?
I think in the New Mexico GOP, you kind of have to do that. There's so many people scrambling to unseat you. And it's that, I guess, is my pet peeve. Is I've said this so many times, to keep track of who hates whom in the New Mexico GOP, I need an Excel spreadsheet and to update it every week.
Right.
So you kind of have to play the heavy to stay on top of all that. And what that gets in the way of is getting more Republicans elected. The real loser of all that infighting are Republican candidates. And certainly we see that by concentrating so hard on CD2, and I think John Arthur Smith's seat, Albuquerque, just the Northeast Heights, which should traditionally be a Republican stronghold, is just, just a sea of cerulean.
I love that. So many colors today. I love it. Thank you all for your thoughts and opinions this week. We very much appreciate it.